Hello world, it's Birdo Prey 5, Qapla, and welcome to my review of Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 6, Scavengers. Scavengers. And it opens with the Discovery being rebranded, not the NCC 10031, but the NCC 10031A. Did the entire ship get destroyed and rebuilt since the last episode? No. We get Saru telling us that over the past 3 weeks, the ship has been updated to whatever it is, 32nd century standards. They've got fancy detached nacelles. They've got some programmable matter integrated into the ship, and their computer evolved. I don't know if he meant the computer physically evolved or it's just that Starfleet brought them up to specs. Starfleet doesn't seem to care that this computer is sentient. They didn't care about that, but I guess now that they've got detached nacelles, they decided to just throw an A at the end of the registry because that's not how it works, people. That's not how it works. Okay, the Enterprise went from the cage version to the TOS version to the first goddamn movie, and it never got an A. It didn't get an A until it was destroyed and had to be rebuilt, and then they put an A. How much do you want to bet somebody who writes for Star Trek Discovery looked at the movies, saw the Enterprise had an A, didn't realize it got destroyed, and just says, oh, I guess when you update the ship, you throw an A at the end of it? This is ridiculous. I mean, it's such a small part of the episode, but it's so ridiculous to anyone who understands Trek. I mean, we got the Voyager J last episode, which the Star Trek Discovery people should have no idea what the hell that even means, because as far as we know in Starfleet, no other ship has ever been given the A, B, C, or bloody D treatment before, besides the Enterprise. And that hadn't happened by the time Discovery's crew had left. So why they even knew the J meant what it meant, God only knows. But now they've got the A after their nacelle, after their number, which seems to be the only thing those droids are good for, is to go out and repaint the ship. Because obviously we know those droids are not good for, doing menial tasks. Otherwise, back in episode 1 or 2, we wouldn't have needed Gene to clean up the dead body of Leland. But so we saw the droids repainting the ship to the 1031A. They've got detached nacelles and whatever. The whole ship gets an upgrade. Everybody gets new badges. You would think they would have given them the badges first, but the badges are apparently the last thing they get. And now their fancy badges aren't just badges. They're also hollow pads, communicators, tricorders, and personal transporters, and I'm sure whatever else the writers need them to be at the time. Now, I'm not particularly offended because you know what? It is the future. And hell, between TOS and TNG, the badges became communicators. And certainly it seems like with personal transporter tech, that's just another thing you could throw into the badge. And okay, the badge is also a hollow emitter, so you can do your tricorder through your badge. You know what? It actually makes sense for future tech. I'm not upset about it. I'm just upset that it's going to lead to more lazy writing. And this show needs lazy writing like I need, I don't know, 2 more pairs of legs that don't work. It's just ridiculous. So Saru gets to his first meeting or whatever with the other captains of Starfleet, and Admiral Vance from Vance Refrigeration is leading the meeting, and Admiral Vance from Vance Refrigeration is giving all the captains assignments. This ship has to go bring shielding to some planet because of solar flares. Another ship has to go bring food replicators to some planet that's low on food. and this mission's going to take a couple of weeks. This mission's going to take a couple of months. And Saru's like, sir, if I may, we can. And apparently nobody else knew about the spore drive. None of the other captains knew the spore drive existed yet. It's been 3 weeks. Discovery has been there 3 weeks. And Admiral Vance didn't talk about the Discovery to anyone. And apparently none of the other captains came over, said hello, wanted to know about Discovery. So Admiral Vance uses this time at this meeting, now that Saru kind of brought it up and said, but we can get there instantly. And everybody's like, what the hell are you talking about? And Admiral Vance is like, no, Discovery is our first responder, our immediate need. And I'm like, some of the other captains like, what the hell are you talking about? And like, oh yeah, did I forget to tell you? Discovery has an experimental spore drive that lets them jump any place in the galaxy instantly. And all the other captains like, what? And Vance, this is from Vance Refrigeration, says, oh, by the way, that secret does not leave this room until I say it does. So we all know that secret is going to leak out because it's exactly what he told. Why? Either this is the biggest secret in the galaxy and he should never have let Saru leak it to begin with, or the entire Federation, at least Starfleet, should know about it because God knows what they could do, what good they could do. So for all these other ships gets missions, the Discovery is going to stay behind because they need a fast response just in case the Emerald Chain, which is the Orion and Andorian Syndicate, might attack this planet. And Vance doesn't know why they would attack the planet, but they said they're sure as hell not going to let them do it. And so they need Discovery to just sit ready and be ready to jump anytime in the next 12 hours. Why it might not be the 13th hour, I have no idea. Apparently it's 12 hours till this situation will resolve, and Discovery might have to go on a dime, on a drop. So they have to wait. And if that would be fine and all, except while they were showing off the new bridge equipment and people were getting used to the programmable matter controls, they get a hail. The ship gets a hail. And so they put it on screen, even though we were told that view screens were so quaint. So they put it on screen, and who is hailing them? It's Grudge, the cat. Tilly's the only one who recognizes Grudge. It's Booker's cat, Grudge, is on the view screen hailing the Discovery. So it turns out that Book programmed his ship to go find Michael Burnham if his mission to someplace, if he didn't get back on the ship in 24 hours, he was going to send the ship to Michael Burnham with Grudge. And he said, just stay there, hold on to Grudge, and I'll find you eventually. So many problems with this. How does Book know where the Federation is? When Book left, they didn't know where the Federation was. He left before they got Adira, if I remember, or certainly before Adira gave the coordinates. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I thought Book left before they got the coordinates for the Federation. And even if he hadn't left, why would they have given Book the coordinates to the Federation if there's some type of big secret? He's going out. At first, he was supposed to get a whole new start in a whole new quadrant, and he seems like he's fallen back into his ways. So part of Book's transmission is that he found a black box, and this was something Michael wanted. And so Michael has been investigating the burn, obviously, since she got to the future. And what she had found in 2 previous black boxes that she had found over the course of a year is that the timing of the burn, the instant the ship blew up, was a few microseconds off, which means that the burn didn't happen in the instant everybody thought it did. Okay, so if it happened over here, at 1:02 p.m., and it happened over here at 1:02 p.m. and 4 microseconds, well, then it took time for the burn to move from here to here. And that makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is that she says, well, she can triangulate the origin of the burn if she gets a third black box. And I will on the surface, triangulate. Yeah, we do that. On Earth, if you got 3 cell phone towers or GPS satellites, you can triangulate your position. That's why it says triangulate for 3. But in space, where there's no surface of the Earth, you need 4. You need 4 things to triangulate a point of origin. So you can make some guesses with 3. Don't get me wrong. 3 does help narrow it down. But technically, if she wanted to find a point of origin, she would need 4. She's only got 2. Booker has this third one, and we're made to believe that this is the one that counts. That once she has this third one, they're going to be able to figure it all out. The science is dubious, but to be honest, as Discovery science goes, this is pure genius from the Discovery writers. We find out that the leader, and I think they might have dropped this name before, but we didn't catch it. It was so quick. The leader of the Emerald Chain, the Orion and Andorian Syndicate, is Osira. And in case we weren't sure who Osira was, we still don't know, but we do know now Osira is definitely a she. Just in case we weren't sure, that the top person, the leadership position, it's a woman. In case you were taking bets and you bet Osira was a dude, you lost. I mean, it seems so obvious, but yeah, you lost. You lost. When they were upgrading the ship to the programmable matter, and Owa or Ona, whatever, the navigator, she's like, do we really need this? And the guy in back, who I don't know his name, he's the communications officer, he's like, hell yeah, we do. Like, he was so excited for it. Whatever. Didn't matter. Oh, the other thing, the personal transporter. We have Linus in this episode, the big reptilian with the big eyes, the guy who sneezed on the guy who died last season. Linus, at least he has a memorable name. He is again being used for comic relief this episode. As the entire episode, he is materializing in places he doesn't mean to be. And at weird times. He just materializes on the bridge. He's like, this isn't the mess hall. And he materializes in, I don't know, somewhere else. He's like, this isn't sick bay. It's ridiculous. I don't know why, but he does come through at the end. There is one genuinely halfway funny part with Linus. But if Linus can't figure out how to use the personal transporter, it seems to me like he would materialize outside in space and just die. Or what's wrong with this future tech that they can't figure out how to, or everybody else on the ship knows how to work the transporter but Linus. Whatever. So let's see. Okay, so I said Michael, so Book ship comes in, and basically Michael wants to go find Book and find this black box. But Saru is like, no, we're on call for the next 12 hours. We've got to be ready to leave on a moment's notice. We have our orders. And Michael's like, 12 hours. I'll be done well before 12 hours. Because, of course, she knows she will. How does she know this? She doesn't have any idea where Book is, except a planet. She doesn't know what situation he's in, but she's sure she'll be done within 12 hours. And Saru's like, Michael, in case you weren't specifically clear, it's not that we have to leave in 12 hours. It's that we can be called between now and 12 hours from now. I don't know why 13 hours would make it clear. It would be fine. But he's like, no, we're on call for the full 12 hours. We can't go now. So I don't know why. First, it took 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks for Book ship to get to, well, we don't know how long it took to get to Michael, but Michael said the message that she got, the holo recording from Book, was made 3 weeks ago. The holo recording said that he was going to program his ship to wait 24 hours and then find Michael if he didn't come back. So, and then she said that was 3 weeks ago. So presumably the ship has been in high warp, headed towards the Federation for 3 weeks minus a day. I don't know how accurate they were, but fine. Let's say 3 weeks it took the ship to get to Michael. So sure, if Michael has the Discovery, she could jump right to where Book is, maybe do something in a few hours and jump back. Maybe. But she can't get used to the Discovery, or at least not for 12 hours. So does she say, well, let's just wait the 12 hours, and then after the 12 hours, we can go save Book, since it's already been 3 weeks anyway? What's another 12 hours going to matter? That would have been my response. She asked Saru to please talk to Admiral Vance and explain the situation, that, hey, we have the opportunity to get a third black box and we can track down the origin of the burn. No, of course not. What does Michael Burnham do? As soon as Saru tells her we have our orders and we're not going to do what you want, Michael Burnham goes to Georgiou and says, hey, I've got a rogue mission and I need to know if you're in. You're the only one who can help me. And of course, Georgiou is like, oh, of course, yeah, you had me. She tries to explain to Georgiou all these things, and Michael's like, I'd rather regret something I did than something I didn't do, which is actually a great piece of advice. If you're ever going to have a regret, you'd rather regret something you did than something you didn't do. I fully support that. I was surprised it came out of Michael, but it really had no bearing on the episode. So Georgiou's like, yeah, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. And so Georgiou and Michael just sneak off and take Booker's ship to go find him. But here's the problem, right? Here's the problem. Book's ship took 3 weeks to get to Michael, presumably. Okay? Michael and Georgiou seemingly get to Booker, or at least to the planet that they know he's on, in what feels like a few minutes. Okay? This should be weeks of time passing, but we know a hell of a lot less than 12 hours pass, because throughout the episode, we see what's going on Discovery, and they're still in the 12-hour window. Meanwhile, Michael makes it all the way to Book's planet, and we'll get into what she does there, gets Book, obviously, and comes back, and they're still within the 12-hour window before this all happens. So how is Book's ship able to go so fast that they can make it to find Book and back? The Federation is less than 12 hours away. In fact, it's got to be less than 6 hours away, and plus time that's spent on the planet, which we're told is about 45 minutes or so. So is this just random chance that where Book happens to be, that there's and it turns out, of course, it's a emerald whatever hotbed planet that's run by Osiris's nephew. It's a salvage and junkyard, and it's near the Bajorans, because the Bajorans run a trading post nearby. We don't see them, but we hear about them. So that literally they're either next door. I mean, they would have to be like closer than Earth is to Vulcan, or did they just forget? Okay, I think the writers just forgot that Book's ship doesn't have a spore drive, and I might seem tedious that I'm complaining about this, but the lack of time. You set rules for your universe. Okay, you set your rules for a universe, and in this universe, the Discovery is special because it's the only ship that can instantly jump across the galaxy. And further, in this future, it takes a long time to get to places because of limited dilithium. And even at warp, high warp, to cross a quadrant, or half a quadrant, or even a few sectors, it takes a noticeable amount of time. So you create these rules, and then you go and you break them in the next episode. And this is honestly, one of the things that upsets me the most. And it's not only about Star Trek, and it's, you say, well, you're hating on Star Trek, but you give a pass to. No, I don't give a pass. Okay, it was the biggest problem with Star Trek Five was the distance between, and that's saying a lot, but was that they were able to cover all that distance so quickly. But even more so, and more relevant to this point, is that the Orville, an infinitely better show, the Orville Identity Part 2. If you go back to my original Orville review for Identity Part 2, I really didn't like the episode all that much, even though most people think, oh, Identity Part 1 and 2, greatest Orville episodes ever made. Identity Part 1, yes. Identity Part 2, no. In my opinion, it was ruined by the same thing. It took a month for them to get to Kalon, and then they get back to Earth in just a few hours. And then they get to the Krill in a shuttle, nonetheless, in seemingly just a few minutes. It made no sense. They completely broke what little rules they made about about the distance between systems and the distance between other species, and it ruined the entire episode for me. And this basically is what's ruining the episode for me. They completely ignored time. They ignored time last week when they did debriefings of several crew members, all within a single hour. What looked like it was taking days, all turned out to be taking a single hour. But let's move on. So I'm pissed. They completely effed the timeline. They don't know how long it takes to get places. But maybe we can salvage some of the episode. So Burnham and Georgiou, while they're flying to get Book, they start talking, and Georgiou is basically trying to get from Michael, listen, Georgiou knows that Michael and Book hooked up. Okay, she knows it. Michael and Book have both denied it. For whatever reason, Michael doesn't want anybody to know that the guy she was with for a year, they didn't do anything. They're like, oh, it was just professional. Michael lies about having her own ship. And so Georgiou's asking her, and Michael's like, I didn't love here. And Georgiou's like, aha. Michael's like, what? She's like, you said you didn't love here. And she's like, no, I said I didn't live here. Georgiou's like, no, you said love here. So Georgiou gets it out of Michael that, oh, okay, they might have hooked up. Like this was some surprise or we didn't know. Anyway, in the middle of this analysis, Georgiou has some type of Michael's getting an espresso conveniently. Georgiou has some type of like flashback PTSD moment where we see her appears to be as Empress in the mirror universe, and she's crying over the death of somebody. I couldn't quite tell who it was, but she was yelling the name San, like she was having like a panic attack or something. And it was very out of character for Georgiou. And throughout the episode, you see that this is a new recurring thing. Eventually, Michael asks her about it, and she's like, yeah, these started a couple weeks ago. So presumably, and I know there have been theories that when Georgiou was being debriefed by the weird guy with the glasses, that they did something to her. And I guess that this would sort of confirm, I don't know if he was Section 31 or what, but yes, he did do something to her. Or possibly, hear me out, the fact that her universe has now pulled further away somehow from the current universe. Maybe she's going to find it hard to exist in our universe. But whatever it is, I'm guessing this is going to be the reason Georgiou will eventually have to leave the Discovery crew behind and try to make her way back to either her universe or her time. But whatever they did, something is getting worse, and she's having these panic attacks. And of course, it's going to come back to bite her in the ass a little bit as we get closer to the end. So Georgiou, they actually make fat jokes. They make fat jokes about Grudge. Because Michael was saying how she was going to find Book, and how Book has this thing that he always has with him, so he can always find Grudge in case Grudge got lost. And Georgiou is like, Grudge can't get lost. The thing has its own gravity field. So they're making a fat joke about the cat. Fine. Georgiou makes a fat joke about the cat. That's fine. But the very next scene, we see that Michael left Grudge with Tilly without her permission. Without her permission, she went into Tilly's quarters and left Grudge in Tilly's quarters. So Tilly opens her door to her quarters, and there's Grudge there. And Tilly, not a cat person. Poor Tilly, who otherwise seems so sweet and nice, she really doesn't like Grudge. And then she makes a fat joke. Tilly makes a fat joke about Grudge. She asks the computer, she says, locate Michael Burnham. And the computer says, Michael Burnham is not on board. And then Tilly's like, holding Grudge. She's like, did you eat her? Don't have Tilly make fat jokes. Come on, people. Don't have Tilly make fat jokes, okay? Tilly and the cat are nice people. The cat did not eat Michael Burnham, Tilly. You know she didn't eat it. And it was kind of funny. But you don't have Tilly make a fat joke. It's just not right. It's just not right. So back on the ship, Book ship, they drop out of warp, and there's a whole bunch of ship parts in the atmosphere around orbiting the planet. And Georgiou says, looks like a graveyard. And Michael Burnham's like, oh, I see this all over. It happened because of the burn. Anyway, they get a hail from the planet, and it turns out to be a hollow hail. And we get an Orion dude pops up, and he's like, yo, we don't deal with the public. Go to the Bajoran exchange if you want to buy something. And Georgiou takes it like she's the one in control. She's like, oh, and she starts going on after this guy. Like, yeah, you're clearly too stupid to run a place like this. Tell your boss I have real dilithium. I'm coming down. He's like, if you come down, you're going to get attacked. She's like, I have real dilithium. Your boss would kill you if she knew what you said. And so she's like, and my servant's coming too, meaning Michael. And so it turns out that this guy, his name's Tolar. He's an Orion. And Georgiou totally insulting him every chance she gets. And her explanation is he's a bully. He explains it to Michael. He's a bully. And bullies crumble when they meet a bigger bully. So that's Georgiou's reasoning for being so ridiculously over the top. I understand why this guy didn't just shoot her, but I guess he's like, well, they do have dilithium, so whatever. He's Tolar. How did he come to run this? Well, he's Osira's nephew. So nepotism. And as you would expect with nepotism, he's probably not the sharpest, knife in the draw. And Georgiou realizes that too. So they go down, and she's like, I'm looking. Actually, Michael says, my boss is looking for 24th century self-sealing stem bolts, which was a great stem bolts reference to the DS9 era when Nog and O'Brien and many a times on DS9 we heard about self-sealing stem bolts, which were from the late 24th century. So okay, fine. So that was one of the several things they were looking for. Meanwhile, Tolar did say they took their weapons. They won't be allowed their weapons back until they leave, and they're not going to actually do any discussion until he sees the dilithium. But then, of course, he immediately lets them do shopping before he sees any dilithium. So as they're walking around, they see Book in the distance. Apparently, Book is being held as a slave. Michael's like, where do you find these people that work around here? And she names a few, I guess, planets or exchanges. He's like, no, all these people here, Osira, so they work here forever. So he basically, they're slaves. They're slaves. We watch a guy, an Andorian who had his antennas cut off. Now, if you saw Enterprise, when an Andorian loses even one antenna, they become physically unable to do just about anything. They can't stand, they can't walk, they need a lot of help. In fact, the cutting off one antenna kind of voids an Andorian's whole ability to do anything. They can't do combat, they're not expected to be able to do anything. So this Andorian had both antennas cut off, but is still able to seemingly do whatever the hell he wants. He's putting these things in the back of people's necks. You can tell whatever it is, it's not good, and the people hate him for it, and whatever. He doesn't want to be doing it. We try, and I don't remember his name. We find out that he's actually a really nice guy, and he's trying to look out for the people in the slaves. He's being forced to do this by Osira himself. But of course, some of the people there, they call him a traitor because he's the one putting these things in their neck, even though they know if he doesn't put it in the neck, he'll be tortured to death. So it's like, what's he going to do? He's still trying to help people, but they don't want his help. Book is like the only person who's on good speaking terms with him and the rest of the people. Book knows he's a good guy. And so this Andorian guy, he's going to come back. In the meantime, some guy, this Asian guy, Lai, steals a water ration. And so they see this, and Tolar wants to make an example out of him. So they're like, we still haven't tested our new perimeter fence. So he opens the door and he tells this guy Lai, he's like, make a run for it. And he has his arm cannon and he starts shooting at him like Yosemite Sam shoots at Bugs Bunny to make him dance. I was waiting for him to say, dance, varmint, dance. But no, he says, run, faster. So he's shooting at his feet. So he's running, and he's running. He's like, maybe you'll make it. He's like, because we haven't tested it. So he's running right through this barrier, this electrical, force field barrier. And of course, as soon as his body penetrates the force field barrier, his head explodes. Yes, a big bloody head explosion right as he leaves the force field. And so Tolar's like, oh, I guess it does work. So Booker is being held at gunpoint because, of course, he tried to prevent this from happening. So Georgiou is like, oh, I want to buy this tech. And the guy's like, no, you can't. It's proprietary. It's not for sale. Okay, whatever. So Michael and Book get some time alone. Michael's like, I want to, what he has. So she's like, more of it. So they go behind an aisle and they start hugging. And Book is like, I've got the black box. It's in my quarters. We just need to get it. And Book's like, Michael's like, I'm not leaving without you. And Book's like, well, I'll get myself out. You don't have to worry about me. But Michael knows there's no way he's ever escaping. He's got one of the things in his neck, so he can't leave. So Michael says, remember what we did on whatever 7? And so they're going to do this here. So they're going to do this escape plan. So, of course, Book tells the Andorian guy who has his antennas cut off that they're going to try to escape. And the Andorian guy tells some people. And this is when we're given that there's 43 minutes until the next shift change. And in 43 minutes, Book is going to get on a ship and he'll be gone for at least a week. So it's very good that Michael stole the ship and came when she did, because if she was even 43 minutes late, it would have been too late. And Book very well might be dead. If not dead, he'd at least be a broken man, because Osira was going to break him or whatever. And so that's why Michael had to come instantly and not wait the 12 hours. How she got there so fast, we've already said that doesn't make any sense. Back on Discovery, meanwhile, Adira is sitting on the floor in the spore room, not the spore cage, but the engineering, wherever it is that Stamets always is, and talking with her, imaginary boyfriend. And the boyfriend's like, there's basketball courts and bocce courts. You should go out and do something. You always come here. We're not making any new memories. And Adira's fighting with him, like, yeah, well, these are important things too. Stamets comes walking by and is like pissed that everybody changed everything up. And she's like, you have to take that up with Admiral Vance. And then Adira's like, oh, by the way, I upgraded the spore drive. And Sam was like, what? Yeah. She's like, yeah, I upgraded the spore drive. And she takes him to the spore tube. And she's like, yeah, you don't need to use those things on your arms anymore. I just put this goo on there. You just stick your arms and your hands in the goo. And she's like, I totally upgraded it to do what improved. And is Stamets mad? How did this happen? How did she upgrade the system without Stamets knowing? Who gave her authority to even touch the spore drive? They needed to be able to leave within a matter of seconds if they got dispatched. How did Saru not know this happened? How did Stamets not know this happened? The woman, the kid, Adira, isn't in Starfleet as far as we know. She isn't in uniform. She's making no formal commitment. Yet she still has not only free reign of the ship, she has the access to the most highly classified system on the ship, the most important system on the ship, and was able to take it apart and rebuild it without Stamets' permission, without Saru's permission. And she did it. And nobody questions it. Stamets says, oh, thank you. This is much better. Nobody questions how she did it, why she did it. Nobody checks to see if it works. They got to make an emergency jump at any minute, perhaps. Nobody even says, maybe we should test. Maybe we should test if this highly sensitive spore drive even works. Because this 16-year-old kid that nobody knows anything about, but it's a trill that we never heard of. And maybe she fucked up. Maybe she screwed something up. No, we don't know. We'll just assume it works. It is beyond crazy that the writing, that they expect us to believe that this could ever happen. That this could ever happen. And Stamets is happy. Stamets, the guy who gets mad at everybody for everything, for some reason, for Adira, oh, he's happy. He's like, oh, thank you so much. And later on, Adira looks at the things on his arms and she's like, you know what? I bet I could fix that too. And then literally within a few minutes, and again, this is all happening within that 4-hour, within this 12-hour countdown. So we know this doesn't go on days. And it's also happening while Michael is away. So we know this is all happening within 6 hours, that those things on Stamets' arm are completely removed. And then he has his arms back to a completely normal looking human. And Dr. Colbert, the medical officer on the ship, the chief medical officer, didn't know anything about it until Adira did it. The chief medical officer is like, so Adira did this? Shouldn't the chief medical officer be doing this? Fuck's sake. Adira is pulling apart sensitive engineering equipment, rebuilding it, and then Stamets lets her, do medical work on his arms when his husband or boyfriend is the chief medical officer of the ship? For Christ's sakes, wouldn't you say maybe we should get him here just in case something goes wrong? These are my fucking arms. Oh my fucking God. It wasn't even that bad in my head until I said it out loud. Oh, I'm sorry, Mama Pray. I know. It didn't sound that bad until I just spoke it out loud. Adira is doing fucking medical work on Stamets' arms, and he's dating the fucking doctor of the fucking ship, and he didn't even know it was fucking happening. What the fuck is going on? And I wasn't going to give this a bad rating. I was going to say, it's a so-so episode. Fuck. I'm sorry. I'm not being negative. I'm trying so hard. So, also going on in Discovery, Tilly is giving orders. Ensign Tilly. Ensign Tilly is giving orders to people on the crew of higher rank than her. And then Saru comes to speak to Tilly to see if Tilly knows where Michael Burnham went. And Tilly's like, no, I'm sorry. She didn't tell me anything either. She just left me with this cat. And then Tilly gives Saru advice. She's like, you know what I think? She's like, you need to be the one to tell Admiral Vance Michael left, because if you're not the one who tells him, Admiral Vance is going to think we're all misfits. And Saru's like, you're very astute, Tilly. So Ensign Tilly, of course, Saru, even without Michael Burnham, can't be allowed to make decisions on his own. He needs to consult with the wise and brave and stunning Tilly to make that type of command decision. So yeah, Tilly's like, shit. She throws Michael. She does actually throw Michael under the bus. She's like, listen, Michael made her own decisions. She made this decision. She made it forcing you to make this decision. You got to just go tell the Admiral. So, you know what? A little respect there for Tilly, though no respect for the writers who couldn't let Saru make this damn decision on his own without consulting an effing ensign. Meanwhile, back on the planet, there's they need 40 minutes. So they tell her they're going to keep shopping. Georgiou's like, we're going to keep shopping. So Tolar is getting bored with them. He's like, okay, fine. Just send a drone to follow them. So Georgiou and Michael are walking down these, it looks like a junkyard, aisles back and forth, or almost like a junkyard meets a Home Depot. And so there's this drone just following them, watching them. And so Georgiou is, and they're just trying to keep up appearances, even though they're just buying time. So Michael's like, I think I see some tritanium over there. So she walks up to this big metal, looks like a big metal stick. And so she picks it up, and the drone, we see through the drone's eyes, and it says scanning, and it says no tritanium found. So not only was this drone listening, but it following them, it was listening. It picked up, they said they were looking for tritanium. Then it scanned if what Michael picked up and said, oh, no tritanium found, like it was about to sound an alarm. And of course, Michael just uses the stick to smash the drone, just smashes the drone out of the sky. And Michael's asked Georgiou, like, I wonder how long before they notice what happened. And then, of course, that instant, the alarms go off. No tritanium found. Okay. Back at Federation or Starfleet, Saru goes to Admiral Vance Refrigeration, and says he has to tell him about number one. They keep calling her number one. He's like, our number one left. She's on a rogue mission. She had her reasons. He doesn't agree with them. But regardless, even without our number one, Discovery is still ready and able to go at a moment's notice. So while this is happening, Willa, Vance's security chief, says the Caroga, not the Caroga, the Caroga or whatever ship is back. And Admiral Vance says, okay, make sure it's empty before you do the baryon sweep. Baryon sweep, yay! That goes back to the Next Generation. And there was an episode where the Enterprise D, everybody had to get off the ship because it needed its, annual baryon sweep. You would think in the future they would have found a way to not need baryon sweeps, but apparently it's one of those things that even, 600, 700 years past TNG, they still need to do these highly toxic baryon sweeps, which requires everyone to be off the ship. So that was just a little Easter egg callback to baryon sweeps. In the meantime, Vance tells Saru, okay, whatever, you can go without her, that's good. He doesn't seem to be all that upset. He doesn't seem to be all that upset. He doesn't ask, what is this about? He's just like, okay, whatever. So Saru goes back to the Discovery, kind of surprised that, like, yeah, he thought it would be worse. And to be honest, so did I. I think the whole point of it was Vance is like, couldn't give a shit at this point. Okay, so now we're back on the planet and the alarms are going off. So the rescue mission or whatever has begun. So we see everybody with these arm cannons that we saw in the first episode. And usually when you get shot with an arm cannon, you disintegrate, except when you don't. Because in this scene, the helpful Andorian gets shot. He jumps in front of Book to take a shot. And instead of disintegrating, he just takes a really hard hit to the chest. But of course, he doesn't die because they want him alive. So he's injured. So Book is staying with him. Michael and Georgiou are fighting. They gave an explosive to, I don't know, Book or the Andorian. One of them set off an explosive. So Tolar, who was on Book's ship with Michael and Georgiou. Oh yeah. So the Georgiou and Michael get arrested because they destroyed the drone. They're in handcuffs. So Tolar, meanwhile, Georgiou is still insulting Tolar like crazy. So Tolar takes him to their ship, and somebody comes out and says, I found what you're looking for. And there was 30, I don't know what, 30 pieces or 30 kilograms of pure dilithium. So Tolar's like, look who's stupid now, huh? And he's like, oh, wait, you weren't here. You weren't here to buy anything. And Georgiou is like, I'm almost proud of you for finally realizing that. And he punches her, and she's like, whatever. The explosion goes off at just the right time. And, wow, have I been talking that long? Fuck. The explosion goes off at just the right time. And this really bothers me. Okay, I've got to pause it. How long was this episode? Oh, only 49 minutes. But man, that's going to take a while to finish. 49-minute episode. The explosion goes off at the right time. And so Tolar has his guards leave. So it's just Tolar and like one or two other guards. And of course, Michael Burnham and Georgiou, both being handcuffed, still manage to beat the shit out of them. They get the controller for the gate for the perimeter fence, with Georgiou already figured out was in his pocket because he kept touching his pocket. And yeah, despite being handcuffed, and despite Georgiou having her biggest panic attack yet and actually losing consciousness for a minute or two, Michael Burnham alone with just her legs manages to beat the crap out of Tolar himself. And then finally Georgiou wakes up, kicks Tolar in the head, gets the fence thing to take down the perimeter. Tolar manages to self-beam, insta-beam himself off the ship, but they already take down the fence. So then Book and all of his other slaves, and this isn't all the slaves, mind you, this is one work detail. We're presumed that there's plenty of other people on this planet, but Book's one work detail, one shift. They all run out through the perimeter. Once it goes down, there happens to be a transport ship waiting there for them. Why there's a transport ship there? I guess that was a ship Book was going to take. Very convenient timing. So all these people run to a transport ship. Book, however, waits with the Andorian and tries to pull the Andorian out, even though the Andorian can't move. And then who comes to the rescue? But of course, now that they got control of the ship, Michael Burnham and Georgiou come flying over with Book's ship. It's turned sideways, just narrow enough to fit through the buildings. And they are vaporizing people left and right. They're vaporizing Andorians. They're vaporizing Orion. They're vaporizing any bad guy. Zoom, zoom, zoom. They're shooting the phasers or lasers or whatever the hell the ship has. And they're vaporizing. Maybe a dozen people, maybe more. Just comes through, insta kill, and Book is like, yeah. Book's so happy, and so they beam Book and the Andorian onto the ship, and so they're in space now, or about to go into space. And Georgiou is like, yeah, follow this or whatever. And there's these other 3 starships that they seemingly was going to follow them or attack them. Georgiou fires on them first. And these 3 starships, one of them looks like a Starfleet vessel, maybe an old mothballed Starfleet vessel that they took over. They all fall into this compound where Tolar presumably was. And I would have to guess God knows how many dozens or hundreds of other so-called slaves, or whatever they were probably down there working too. Georgiou purposely crashes the ships, attacks the ships so that they crash into the compound. God knows how many innocent people were killed. And then that's it. Book ship and the transport ship warp away. But not before, so they get the Andorian on, and he's in bad shape. And Michael says, don't worry, I've already alerted the Discovery sickbay. How can Michael Burnham instantly alert the Discovery sickbay from where they were if it took Book's ship 3 weeks to get to Michael Burnham? If he wanted to send a message and he could send it instantly, why didn't he just send it instantly? And since when are the subspace relays back up that they can communicate against such a long distance instantly? It makes no sense that Michael Burnham can talk to the Discovery from where she is. Again, they made these rules. They're the ones that made the rules that communication is no longer instant, and communication takes a long time. And it took 3 weeks for the ship to get to Michael Burnham, for the information to get to Michael Burnham. But now Michael Burnham can communicate instantly with the Discovery. And again, Michael Burnham and the ship, they get back to the Discovery well before the 12 hours is up. So this entire expedition to go take Book's ship, which only travels at warp, go spring book, and come back, have a whole jailbreak. This all takes far less than 12 hours. Okay. So Michael decides, well, on their way back to the Discovery, that her and Georgiou have to have a talk about what happened. And she like, Georgiou can't anymore pretend that doesn't know that, she fainted. And so Michael's like, what's happening? And Georgiou's like, I honestly don't know. It started happening a couple weeks ago. And Michael's like, why didn't you tell anybody? She's like, until I know what it is, I've got nothing to ask for. And Michael's like, you're not alone. She touches her on her back. He's like, there's a whole ship of people on the Discovery who could help you. And Georgiou's like, you will not tell anyone, Michael. So we know something happened to Georgiou. I'm not 100% sure what. Nobody's supposed to be. Okay, so back on the Discovery, Stamets sees Adira talking to her imaginary boyfriend in the mess hall, which of course it just looks like she's talking to herself, but she's talking to an empty chair. So Stamets says, I see you talking to yourself. And so he pulls up a chair and they bond some more. And this is where she says, I could help you with those arm things. And she fixes his arms within seemingly a few minutes, because Michael's on her way back while this is happening. And before Michael gets back, his arms are fixed. And so we get a bedroom scene between Stamets and Culber, Dr. Culber, where Dr. Culber's like, Stamets is like, oh, I really hated those arm things. And Culber's like, I hated them more. And so he's like, Stamets is like, I can't believe I bonded with Adira. And Culber's like, why do you think that is? And he's like, well, he gives a few reasons. But one of the reasons he gives is, well, she loved someone who died and didn't say goodbye. which is, of course, the same thing that happened to Stamets. He loved Dr. Kolber, and he died, but Stamets didn't say goodbye, and he came back to life. So, but the thing is, Stamets didn't know that happened until after he bonded with her. So minor point, but that was not one of the reasons he bonded with her. He had no clue any of that happened. So Michael finally gets back. There's a scene where Michael and Booker are on the turbo lift. Booker's like, yeah, it's time for you to face the music or whatever, face the firing squad. So they're on the turbo lift. Now, the ship has been updated to 32nd century, but of course, we get one of the typical let's halt the turbo lift scenes. So does he say halt turbo lift? Is there just a big red button on the side? No. The most complicated turbo lift controls we've ever seen. Booker, who has no Starfleet experience, somehow knows the one button to press out of these 50 that stops the turbo lift. There's no audio. This doesn't say turbo lift halted or anything. You should have been able to just tell a computer halt turbo lift, but he presses this one button out of a bunch. The turbo lift halts, and they go to kiss, and Linus insta beams in. He's like, oh, this isn't sick bay. And he beams out. And it's like, oh, ha, ha, that Linus, he's always beaming somewhere. So Book and Michael finally kiss. So we know, oh my God, they really were having a relationship. And they tried to tell us they weren't, those pesky kids. Did anybody believe they weren't having a relationship? I didn't, not for one faintest second. And no one on Discovery believed it either, okay? That is just so stupid. So, after the kiss, Michael, Saru, and Admiral Vance are, in Starfleet headquarters, and Admiral Vance of Vance Refrigeration, he's kind of mad at both of them. He tells Saru, he's like, had you told me about what was at stake, I might have agreed to the mission. Because she was going to find the burn with this black box that would have been let her trace or triangulate the source of the burn. And if they can find an origin point of the burn, obviously that would go a long way to finding out what happened, to solving the burn. And he's like, I might have agreed to it, but you didn't even tell me about it. So Vance was a little pissed at Saru for that, but he was very pissed at Michael Burnham. But because he's a male, he can't actually yell at Michael Burnham on screen. So instead, he just tells Michael Burnham, so tell me what I'm about to say. So Michael Burnham says, you're going to tell me that, I disobeyed a direct order and I don't have time for finding out what happened to the burn, and that, I put my crew and Starfleet at risk and I'm a bad person. Blah, 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 blah. He's like, yep, correct. So Michael Burnham basically yells at herself, disciplines herself, and Vance tells Saru that he'll let Saru deal with Michael's discipline. He'll leave it up to him. And he leaves, and Saru basically tells Michael, I thought I could trust you. I thought we'd come past this. But, he says it's my fault too. Saru takes some of the blame. He's like, So Saru demotes her to just Chief Science Officer. She's no longer number one. She's now Chief Science Officer only. And she's to restrict her duties to just Chief Science Officer. Michael Burnham is like almost holding back tears. But she says, Saru, you're doing the right thing, Saru. You're doing the right thing. Earlier when Michael Burnham was talking to Vance, the last thing she says is, the problem is, she's like, I have this feeling. I have a feeling, Vance. I have a feeling. Michael Burnham has a feeling. I've always had this feeling that until we can find what happened, until we know what the burn was, the Federation will never be able to come back together again. This is just a feeling Michael Burnham has had, and that is what justifies her passion for finding out what happened about the burn. Also, I guess Michael Burnham was the only person in the galaxy to say, oh, if we can get the black boxes from 3 separate ships at 3 different places, we could triangulate the position of the burn. Nobody else in the whole galaxy, or at least in Starfleet, thought, hey, this might be a trivial thing to do, right? I mean, they just seem to accept at face value the burn happened everywhere instantly. Did nobody even check a single black box recording or 2 black box recordings from ships on the other side of the quadrant to see, was it really instantaneously, or was there a 5-minute delay between the ship at Earth and a ship, at Bajor that blew up? Nobody knows. Apparently, Michael's the only one who ever thought to even investigate this. This is something they could have easily found within a few years of the burn, but no, it took Michael, coming 120 years later, to come up with this. So it's her feeling. That's her feeling. That's why she did what she did. So Van says, the only reason you're not in the brig right now, Michael, is because you saved lives. Because in Starfleet now, as long as you've saved lives, that is justification for breaking any rules. It's total justification. Which, okay, it's been used as justification before, but come on, that was a direct order. A direct order. Anyway, the big thing at the end, Saru beams out, leaves Michael alone, and Michael's like sad, and she takes off her badge, which means to me she is leaving Starfleet. And now in the coming attractions for next week, we don't really see Michael working with the Discovery crew. I think it's highly likely that at the end of this episode, Michael has made the choice to leave Starfleet, and her and Book are going to go on their missions together, and she will just check in with Starfleet from time to time as she figures out what's going on with the burn. Of course, she gave the black box over to Starfleet. I thought she was going to run the triangulation. If she already had 2 of these black boxes, it would be a trivial thing to do to plug in the third, get the time coordinates of when each happened, and plot out where exactly, because they would be spheres. Presumably they'd be spheres, and you'd see where the 3 spheres touched, and you would get, I don't know, a membrane or a line or something. You'd get a few points where it could be. And if you got the 4th sphere ever, you could definitely pinpoint it. But with 3 spheres, you get a pretty good idea of what the origin of the burn was. And I thought Michael would do that herself, surely, if it meant that much to her. But for whatever reason, she handed it over to Starfleet. So we don't get to see the results of that scan. And now I'm guessing we never will, because I think Starfleet has to hide it for whatever reason. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. We should have gotten that answer in this episode. We didn't. So next week, I'm guessing Michael leaves Starfleet. We'll see what happens. They really didn't show a hell of a lot from next week. And I was going to give this episode like a 6, because before I started, I was like, yeah, it wasn't the worst episode. But oh my God, just how bad it was. The ridiculousness of Adira doing engineering and medical work on the ship without any supervision, without any questions, without the damn medical doctor, chief medical officer, or chief engineering officer agreeing to any of it. The totally broken time constraints that they create themselves and they totally ignore. The ship times, the message times, the communication times. The things that didn't mind was Georgiou having some type of mental issue because clearly they did something to her. Admiral Vance not really giving a shit because this doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. This ship being upgraded to 32nd century tech, that made sense too. What didn't make sense is that they ignored the sentient computer, and really didn't make sense is that they added an A to the end of the ship for no effing good reason, to the registry. It wasn't a bad episode. It wasn't a terrible episode. if you ignored all the problems. But Jesus Christ, I can't give this a 6. I'm sorry. This is a 4. This is a 4 out of 10, and I'm being generous. I am being generous. And I know some of you people out there who want to like the show, you're going to think this is probably a pretty good episode, and I get it. I get it. If I ignored all the pieces of canon they break and their own rules that they created just within this season that they broke, I could find enjoyment in it. But I'm sorry, there's that part of my brain called logic that I just can't shut off. And that forbids me from giving this a higher number because they hold all the cards. The writers hold all the cards. If you want to be able to break rules, don't make them rules. Okay? If you want to be able to have ships go instantly between places, then have Michael add the spore drive to Book's ship. In that year she was gone, she was alone with Book. She could have added in a spore drive. I mean, would I have believed it any less? Not really. And then Book could have had the spore drive too. They could have done these things. I'm sorry. I've been talking for God knows how long. Way too long. 4 out of 10. It hurts. It hurts. If you like this, and I don't know why, if you like this, please remember to comment, like, subscribe, check out my Birdo Prey 5X channel for extra content. I do live streams almost every day, and I hope to see you soon. Qapla all, bird out.